Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and start the meeting, everybody. I think there's still some people walking in the door. First of all, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And where's Jim? Jim. Oh, there you are. I want to recognize this guy because you're almost, what, 90 years old? You're almost 90 years old? 88, and he is out there on the corner of the street every Saturday morning in his Uncle Sam outfit, and he buys his own banners out of his own money, and he's out there faithfully. I mean, I wish more people had his patriotism. So, Jim, come up here, and then I'm going to ask you to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. And thank you for your patriotism. Okay, where's our flag?
Yeah.
Okay, it's back there. Good. Okay, so we'll be back there. Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to talk just real briefly before Tony comes up. So I sent out a poll because there are people that are asking me, kind of begging me, we want to come to the meetings, but we work during the day. So I know people hate change, but the poll indicated Tuesday night would be the best. So I've already talked to the Veterans Center today, and they have confirmed that we can switch to Tuesday night. However, we will not start until June. And in May, remember, it's really critical. I want everybody's input because we're going to discuss who this group is going to endorse for all of the positions except maybe not city council. We'll see. I get so much heat. You have no idea. But anyway, what I'd like to do for our June meeting is to have a town hall type debate for all of the people that are running for the city. We have 6 people running for mayor, and then we have some city council seats that are open. So what I'd like to do is do a town hall style debate in June probably, unless something else more urgent comes up. And I want this audience, we'll do it just like a TV type of town hall debate, which means we'll have at least one moderator or 2. And the audience, before that time, you need to submit to me your questions. You can tell me, I want this question just for all the candidates for mayor, or I want this question specifically for a certain person. And hopefully that way we all can have a good idea, and we'll film it, who is going to be the best candidate for that. So, do you have a question? No? Just, all right. Yes?
Just refer back to the time then for June.
So for June, we'll meet the first Tuesday, starting June, the first Tuesday of every month. The doors will open at 5 p.m., meeting at 5:30. Okay, and so, but May, remember, will be still Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month at this time. Okay, any questions about that? All the way from Reno, just for us. So I would like to integrate. I'd like to integrate you into the Senate. Yes. I would like to introduce Tony Grady. I remember that when he ran for lieutenant governor that I had endorsed him for the Mesquite Patriots, had endorsed him for that position. But he's a great guy, patriot and ex-military and a Christian too, I believe, right?
I am.
Yes. So anyway, welcome and thank you for blessing us. All right, one more thing. Do me a favor, turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate, and please don't walk in front of the camera. We have that happen every meeting, so try not to walk in front of the camera. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. It's good to be here. Down from Reno. So a lot of people ask me how I ended up coming to Nevada. And my wife and I were living with our 4 kids in Dayton, Ohio. And when we got them out of college, we decided it was time to change the locks and move. So Dayton, Ohio is a nice place to raise children, but it's pretty cold.
Yes.
So we wanted to move. So we were going to head down to Texas. We're going to head down to Texas because I have, my wife has 3 brothers, and one of them we were going to kind of move next to near San Antonio. And I was at FedEx in the ops building one day. And here he comes, walking across the ops room. Walt Reed, cowboy, legs up to here, boots, hat, mustache. He says, "Tony, what's this I hear about you moving to San Antonio?" I go, "Yeah, I got a brother-in-law down there." He says, "No, we're not having any of that. You need to look at Reno." So I said, "Walt," I said, "what part of Canada is Reno in?" He goes, "Yeah, since you're geographically challenged, you need to come check it out." So my wife and I house hunted for 3 years in Texas and in Reno, and we liked the mountains, we liked the high desert, but it was the people. Oh, if you haven't been to Dayton, Ohio, Reno isn't that cold. Anybody thinks Reno's cold? No. No. But see, Reno has sun and Dayton doesn't. So anyway, we moved there for the people. We, being in the military, as many of you are, or many of you are attached to people, you've been in lots of communities. You know that you can size up a community pretty quickly. You can tell what the people are like. So we moved to Nevada because of the people. And so it's my privilege to be here today. So thank you for having me. So I'm going to tell you about myself today, and then I'm going to tell you what I plan to do when you elect me to be your next U.S. Senator. So I'm Tony Grady, and I am running to be your next U.S. Senator. Who here wants to help me fire Chuck Schumer? The first step to doing that is that we need to defeat Jackie Rosen in November. So before I get into the particulars, I have to tell you the most important thing about me. If you don't hear anything else that I say, I want you to remember this. Boy, I have their attention.
I know.
I have been married to the same woman for 40 years.
Amen.
We have 4 children. Now, how many people here are parents? Okay, let me see. Ma'am,
Yes.
do children listen? No, they don't listen. I'm sure there's another parent that'll back me up. Anybody back me up? Children don't listen. So I went to the Air Force Academy. My oldest went to Annapolis, and the baby went to West Point because they don't listen. Those children don't listen. And then in the middle, I have one that's a molecular biologist and one that's been running her own personal training business for about 7 years. So my children are successful, and I can dote on them all afternoon. But that's not why I brought them up. I brought them up for this. They're successful. I know how to help young people be successful. We need to elect leaders that want all American children to be successful.
Yes.
That's the most important thing you need to know about me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So to understand Tony Grady and why I'm standing here in front of you today, a little bit of history. My parents were born in the Jim Crow South, poor. They went to college because at that time there were actually benefactors that actually did things to try to help people. And both of my parents benefited from that. They were in 2 different places, Mooresville and Southern Pines. They met at Hampton Institute, a historically black college. My dad became a cabinet maker first and then got his BS and became a vocational ed professor. He taught in several historically black colleges stretching from Texas back to Virginia. Along the way, he got tapped into going into foreign service because there were developing nations that wanted help in turning their cottage industries into business. So since he was an educator and understood vocational education, he was chosen to go into foreign countries and help them build their secondary schools. So as a little boy, I got to live in Africa, Lagos, Nigeria. Then eventually my dad got sent to Vietnam, and I graduated from high school in Bangkok, Thailand, because families couldn't be in Vietnam. So I'm sharing this with you because I've seen communism, I've seen socialism, and they render their people in abject poverty.
Yeah.
Seeing the United States from the outside and the inside as I grew up, I became very patriotic. I went to the Air Force Academy. I became a pilot. I became a test pilot. Now, a lot of times I just keep going on, but I've been critiqued. People say, nobody knows what test pilots do. You know, they look at the right stuff and they say,
He does, I guess.
oh, we got a gentleman over here. Well, he'll be the honest broker to see if I say the truth. But the reality is it's a very dangerous job. In the 50s, we just killed tons of pilots. As we approach the sonic barrier and everything, now, I know that you all may not be that encouraged about flying on an airline, right? But how about this? We need to make sure that our airmen and all those in uniform have the best equipment that they can have. So that's what test pilots do. We go out there and fly the equipment. Now, I thought about bringing it, but I didn't. I should have brought the Navier-Stokes equations, and if you guys saw that, you would go, what's that? That's the reason we have test pilots, because theoretically you can figure out anything on paper. Eventually, you got to bend metal, and someone has to go out there and fly it. So that's what I did. I got to go out there and fly it. So I was a test pilot in the B-2 stealth bomber program. I commanded it. So we had 113 personnel that ran the program during its most intense flying period at the tail end. And I got to test. I was the first human being to fly the B-2, which has a wingspan about twice the size of this room. And it's only probably as deep as this room. Big airplane. So I got to fly it and open the envelope, as we call, 200 feet above the ground at night when you couldn't see outside. Because that's what our airmen were going to have to do in combat. So I got to open it up. And part of the reason why I got to open it up is that was part of my expertise. I flew FB-111s, which is the airplane that has a swing wing, and it has a TFR system on it, and a very, very robust one. So as a young officer, I became an instructor in that and was excellent at that. So when I got into the B-2 program, I was the one tapped to do that. Just want to bring it out because people don't know what test pilots do, and I've been critiqued and glossing over it. It's very dangerous.
Yes.
But in the B-2 program, we delivered it successful and safely. Nobody died. And it will go down as one of the best test programs in our history, and I'm very proud of that. So B-2 was a $24 billion program, so I understand numbers. I also worked in the Pentagon. I worked on the air staff. I was the expert on bombers. So I worked on the bomber portion of the president's military budget. That means I understand the appropriation process and how it works, or probably more accurately how it doesn't work. How it doesn't work. So I have experience with that. I have experience in what the congressmen do. And a lot of times it's not very good, but I understand that process. So after 20 years in the Air Force, I flew for FedEx for 20 years. Because if any of you have ever read Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach, he also wrote another book called Stranger to the Ground. And that's who I am, stranger to the ground, so had to fly for some more years. So I flew for 20 more years with FedEx. And during that time period, I started my own biotech company, and I ran that for 11 years. And I found out what happens when you put your capital at risk. And I also found out when it doesn't go exactly the way you plan. I'm here today and not dead because I promised my wife I would not put the children's college at risk. And I didn't. I didn't. So I survived that gauntlet. But running that company, I learned a lot. Unfortunately, it was during a time when Mr. Obama came out with his medical device tax, and we just felt the brunt of a lot of things. But I learned a lot about business, and it was a great experience. So, how did I get associated with Nevada? Well, I told you about Wall, but my relationship with Nevada actually started 42 years ago. So when I was up at Plattsburgh, New York, flying that FB-111 I talked to you about as a swing wing, we deployed to Nellis. And Nellis has something called red flag. And for those of you that don't know what red flag is, it's a mock air war. So they cycle units through that so that pilots can get experience with what combat would be like. And so I deployed 4 times to red flag. 42 years ago is when I became familiar with Nevada. So I like to say that 42 years ago, I flew over Nevada at 600 miles an hour. Now I walk the trails at 2 miles an hour. And I didn't buzz you guys, okay? So it was a real privilege to move to Nevada. And when I got to Reno, I thought I needed to go to the Reno Air Races. So I went to the Reno Air Races because that's what you do in Reno. And I run into this guy and I look at him and I say, I know you because I know you. Turns out to be Kevin Roll, one of my classmates from the academy who was racing jets in the Reno Air Races. So he took me over to meet all of his jet friends. And I meet this guy who's also an Air Force Academy grad. He happened to be a 1973 grad. And he said, do you know my brother? Since you're in 77, do you know my brother? And I go, well, who's your brother? And he says, well, my brother's Dave Vandam. And I go, yeah, I know Dave Vandam. He was in my squadron. So the guy I was talking to was Rick Vandam. And what happened? Right when I got to Reno, I had an instant family. And in short order, discovered there were about 7 of my classmates from the Air Force Academy that lived there. So it was home. So for me, Nevada's home. Now, being the prideful pilot that I am, I was hanging around and the air races said, we need an air boss. And as I told you, I was a prideful pilot. It's aviation, I can do it. Be careful what you ask for. So the air boss is the good cop, bad cop that tries to keep things going in the right direction at the air races. And because of my background, they wanted me in that job. So I worked for the air races for 4 years. 2 of them, I was the air boss. Safe and successful, nobody died. And I'm very proud of that. So that's very important. So I also found out at that time period a lot about business in Nevada. And because I had my own startup, I also was working with UNR at their innovation center, which is kind of like a business incubator. So they would help businesses 0 to 5 years. And I was one of the mentors. And it's at that time that I became aware that Nevada wasn't doing a good job in its secondary education. You know, our education was horrendous. 48th, 49th, 50th. So I said, I really want to do something about that. And when I talked to the people in the political realm, they suggested I run for lieutenant governor because of my background. So I did. And it's mainly because the lieutenant governor is the point man for business, and businesses rely on workforce, and the quality of workforce is determined by education. So that's how I became involved with the lieutenant governor. So I ran for that, and Stavros beat me out in the primaries by 5.8%, 7,000 votes. So not enough people in Clark County knew who I was. And Stavros is very happy about that. As a matter of fact, he tells a story, which is kind of interesting. Because after he won the primary, I did everything I could to help him get elected. So we're at one of our fundraisers up north, and he tells this funny story. He said, I met Tony Grady when we ran for lieutenant governor out on the Lincoln Day Circuit Trail. And everybody liked Tony, his military bearing. He said, I even like Tony. Then he looked at me and he smiled, and he said, I sure am glad that nobody in Clark County knew who he was. And the reason being is that I won 13 of the 17 counties. So I know Nevadans want my leadership, and I'm stepping up to the plate. So I evaluated my skill set and determined that I needed to run for Senate because the Democrats are destroying the American dream.
Yes.
I want my children and your children to have better options. I want my grandchildren and your grandchildren to have better options. It costs Nevada families $11,400 more annually to maintain parity with what they had before this administration took over. We need to do a better job. So I know that we can fire Jackie Rosen.
Yes.
So I want you to understand that I have been tried and I have been tested throughout my life. You can trust me to deliver what I say I'm going to do. And I think one of the more interesting things I probably ought to mention here before I go on, and how many of you know Patty Caffaretta? Well, I guess she's a Northern Nevada person.
Yeah.
Never mind, don't worry about Patty Caffaretta. How about this? How many of you know Crescent Hardy?
Heard of.
Okay, we have some people that know Crescent. But these are folks who have been in the Nevada landscape for a while in terms of politics. And they said, so one of the things they said is that you also ought to tell the people some of the creature things that you've done. Well, some of the creature things that I've done in terms of working in the community is you've already heard about the air races. But I'm also a tutor. One neat thing is that my wife homeschooled my kids through 8th grade, and then we kicked them into high school, but she homeschooled them. So I taught them all math, and I like to be the math guy. I'm an engineer, but I was also a track coach, and I got to train all of my children in track, and that was fun, watching the oldest go to state. That was really neat. But probably one of the more important things is I'm an Eagle Scout. And Scouts meant a lot to me. So I'm flying for the airlines. Scoutmaster comes up to me because my kids are in Scouts. My 2 oldest boys are in Scouts. He says, I want you to take over the troop. And I go, are you crazy? I'm an airline pilot. I'm gone half the month. He goes, well, if you don't take it over, I'm just going to keep it. And he was burned out. So I got a couple of the dads together, and we agreed that through the 5 of us, one of the 5 of us would always be there. So if I had to be gone, they would be there. So I got to be a scoutmaster. And a little story about that I want to tell, the reason that I brought that up, is that one of those times when I was gone, I was checking out to fly the Indy 11 for FedEx. So it was the biggest cargo plane at the time because I flew internationally. I was up in Alaska going through training, going through simulators. Get a call from my assistant scoutmaster because the troops at summer camp. And he goes, these 7 boys have been mouthing off at me all week. And unfortunately, they happen to be the senior scouts. So we had a little talk. After he hung up, I called each of them. Now, there's this camp out called Roundup. And I don't know how many of you folks would know anything about that because all around the country you have different things. But in the Midwest where we were, in Indianapolis, everybody liked the Roundup because there was a lot of Indian lore. There were people who'd been going to it since they were little and they're bringing their kids and everything. So the scouts love that camp. I called each of them up and said, you're not going to Roundup this year. You should have heard the hue and cries out of the parents. I said, they're not going. 7 of them. 2 of them left the troop. I was the bad guy. All 7 of them made Eagle Scout. The 2 that left came back. After I'd been long gone from the troop, I was at an Eagle Scout Court of Honor. And I walked by this young man, and his mother relayed this to me later. He said, when you walk by, her son was one of the ones that I didn't let go around with. When you walk by today, my son looked at me and he said, I now know what Mr. Grady was doing. He was waiting us out. Because we don't have a gun problem. We don't have a lot of problems that they say we have. We have a dad problem.
Yes.
And we need to hold people accountable. So it was better that I interfaced in those young men's lives when they weren't hurting anybody, before we have law enforcement involved, before we have people's property involved. That's what we need to change in the United States. So now you know more than you want to know about me. But I tell you all that because of this. When you elect me to be your next United States Senator, my priorities are to seal the border, because, thank you, because if we don't have a border, we don't have a country. We have a government that is violating the 4th Amendment of the Constitution. It's supposed to protect us from being invaded. We're being invaded. The other thing that I would do is make sure that we drill more, and we drill more. We actually need to pump more. And we actually need to build a refinery, because more than one, because we have a choke point when we change over gas mixture between summer and winter and all. Those all affect gas prices. They affect all the energy prices. And the reason we need the energy prices to go down is we need to get to be energy independent, because everything in the supply chain goes down and ends up to where in the supermarket we won't be paying as high prices, which is where we need to go, right? We don't need families deciding between gas or eating. This is the United States of America. We don't need that. And then the other thing we need is we need to get the United States back to its proper place in the world stage. Afghanistan was horrendous. I would tell you, if President Trump was in office, there wouldn't be a Ukraine war going on there right now. And Hamas never would have even thought about attacking Israel.
Amen.
So that's what we need to do. We need to get the United States back on its proper place. That's what I'm going to focus on. There's a lot of other things that senators do, like advise and consent. I just promise you now that I would never confirm a Supreme Court justice that can't tell us the difference between a man and a woman. The reason that's so horrendously bad is because we all know that she knows the difference. She's playing with us. She's playing with us. We don't need that in the United States, because when we have justices like that, then we don't have the other branch of government between the executive and legislative and then the judicial. We don't have the judicial standing up the way it should, as it should have intervened in the 2020 election, and it didn't. Because it's feckless. I guarantee that when I am your senator, we're only going to confirm people that actually understand the Constitution of the United States, and when they swear to support and defend it, they mean it. And in this room, you know what that means.
Amen.
And from this wall, we know what that means. So those are my priorities. So because I have been tried and tested throughout my life, you can trust me to deliver. So why do I want you on my team to beat Jackie Rosen? I've just shared a lot of my life here, and I think it's easy for me to say that my entire life has prepared me to serve as your next United States Senator.
Yes.
This is, this wasn't something that I came up with lightly, but I have the maturity and the experience to do this. So the reason I know that I can beat Jackie Rosen and will have the best chance of any Republican candidate is I've shared with you that I understand foreign policy and the diplomatic instrument of power. I understand military strategy and the military instrument of power. I understand the economic instrument of power. There is no other Republican candidate running for Senate that has that broad background.
That's true.
There's only one that has one of them, and one that has another. Well, not even that. But obviously, you know, the former ambassador understands a little bit about foreign policy. But whereas he did everything with Iceland, I had to work with Korea, I had to work with the Philippines, I had to work with Japan, I had to work with England. So I understand a lot about foreign policy, in addition to how I grew up, because I grew up with foreign policy and understand. I can do all of that. I can talk about all of that right now. I can talk about military strategy right now. Joe Brown, who is a Las Vegas attorney and helped to get the mob out of Las Vegas, has endorsed me and wrote that Tony Grady could assume a leadership position immediately when he goes into the Senate because of his broad background. So I challenge you today. I can beat Jackie Rosen. I am more qualified than Jackie Rosen. Chuck Muth has written that no other candidate running for U.S. Senate can even touch my skill set. That's true. But you know what? Tony Grady doesn't beat Jackie Rosen. A team beats Jackie Rosen. I need you on my team. I have to have you on my team, or it won't work. So, another important thing you need to know is that I am the candidate that will appeal to a wider range of voters than any other Republican candidate running in this race. And since demographically in Nevada right now, independents are the largest bloc with 44%. So, if you want to fire Chuck Schumer, I need you to do three things. I need you to pray for me.
Amen.
I need you to vote for me. And I sorely need you to donate to my campaign, because it takes money to run forward. So if you will join my team, I will go to Washington and I will work harder than you've ever seen any of your senators work before, and we're going to get these things turned around. I am Tony Grady, and I am running to be your next United States Senator. Please go to GradyForNevada.com. That's Grady, F-O-R, Nevada.com, and you can see all of my interviews. You can see my position. I've been on Fox. I've been on Newsmax. You can see how I answer questions. But I implore you, I need you to donate to my campaign, because we need the money to keep going. Thank you for having me here today.
Q&A, we're not done.
You didn't tell me I had to answer questions. I would love to answer any of your questions. Yes, ma'am.
First question. When you get to Washington, if you had to share an apartment with two other senators, already senators, who would they be?
Well, that's a good question. That's an excellent question. So, one of them I like is Ted Cruz. Now, the reason I like Ted Cruz is my wife and I have read his book, One Vote Away. And if you haven't read that book, you need to read it, because it talks about how many Supreme Court cases were decided by one vote, and how, if they had lost, how our country would be very different. So I like his ability to debate and his ability to see through the garbage and to bring it up. I think the other one I would like is John Kennedy. Because John Kennedy, I watched him, I don't know if you saw one of his latest, but one, he's so intelligent, but he's so knowledgeable. He's so knowledgeable about what's going on. But there was, the left paraded this snow expert. Was he a snowboarder or a skier?
Cross-country.
Cross-country skier. Anyway, he was a world-class cross-country skier, and he was being examined by John Kennedy, and so he was talking about how because of global warming, there's not as much snow as there was before and everything. So John Kennedy asked him, says, how much CO2 is in the atmosphere? He says, is it the predominant in our atmosphere? Is it getting, and the guy said, yeah, there's a lot of CO2. And of course, we all know that there's not very much CO2 in the atmosphere. It's oxygen and nitrogen, nitrogen being a lot more. So he didn't know about that. And so he asked him all these questions about carbon dioxide. I love the way that he did it because he wasn't yelling at the gentleman, but by the end of him talking, it showed that this guy was a puppet. He had no reason to be there talking about. He didn't even know global warming. So because I'm an engineer, and because I actually spent about 3 years of my life digging into global warming, and I will tell you, after I did it, I was mad, super mad, because I'm mad because those who we are supposed to trust are lying to us.
Yes.
And those scientists know that we don't have anything cataclysmic. So some of you are old like me. Back in 1977, it was global cooling. We were going to freeze. And then you had Leonard Nimoy up there talking about how we're going to freeze on TV. And then it was, it's global warming, and then it turns into climate change because obviously we don't affect the climate. It goes up and down and up and down, that sort of thing. So at any rate, those are the two long-winded answers. Yes, ma'am.
Washington has so much bloat to it, and I'm wondering, what do you see that, what are the agencies we need to job?
CIA.
I'm sorry,
What are the agencies and the committee, what's everything in Washington, what can be purged?
FBI.
Well, first of all, I believe that we need to elect President Trump. We need a strong executive, and the reason I say that is because he will be the nominee. And I know there's a lot of people that have concerns about President Trump.
Not here.
So I just want to tell you what my answer is to everybody, and I got hung up on yesterday because they didn't want to hear the end of my answer. But when people ask me about Trump, this is what I said. When Trump was president, we had low unemployment, especially minority unemployment. We had energy independence. We were feared on the world stage, and nobody was messing with us because we killed them if they did. However, Americans have a right to expect a certain amount of decorum out of their president because we're Americans. I am a person that's concerned about performance. That's what I care about. I am not concerned about antics that irritate people because it's performance that propels us forward. So do I agree with everything that Trump does? No. No one's going to agree with everything I do. Do I not like some of his antics? Well, in a way, I kind of like him because I like to laugh at him. But that's a whole other story. But the reality is that he was a strong executive and had the country going in the right direction. That's what we need right now. We don't need to worry about what's on X or Twitter or whatever. We need to get the United States to be a country back where there's rule of law, not two-tier legal system that we have right now. So we need a strong executive. And the reason that we need that strong executive is because that sets the stage for the agencies that would be purged. So we have severe problems with the CIA, FBI, and Justice Department. So those are going to turn on who the executive puts in charge of them. And I can't wait until General Flynn's in charge of the CIA. I can't wait. Because that's what we need. So once we can get those agencies going right, we need to get back to what Trump's policy was in terms of if you came up with a regulation, I think it was like you had to get rid of 10 or something like that. There was some number you had to get rid of before he would sign one. Because we do have bloat. We do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Yes.
So we really need to tighten it up. But although I would like to get rid of the Department of Education, because I believe that parents control children, not the state, Reagan, one of the most popular presidents of the United States, couldn't get it done. So Senator Grady isn't going to get it done. But this is what Senator Grady can do. I can whisper in Mr. Trump's ear that to make sure that he puts somebody in charge of the agency, somebody like Bill Bennett, somebody who will change the agency to being a repository for best practices and not a dictatorial agency to tell the states what to do. So Florida used to be 48th, 50th in education. Now they're like in the top 5.
Wow.
So obviously there are things that Nevada could learn from Florida. So the Department of Education should be the repository for all those things that they did to improve. And that's the way that department should be. We should get rid of it. Because I'm a constitutional originalist, a fiscal conservative. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that the government should be dictating anything about education. So I'd love to get rid of it. But the reality is that we have the government that we have. We have to make it work for us. The other thing that President Trump with other cabinet secretaries and one of my favorite when he was running for president, Ben Carson, suggested is that you can eliminate a lot of government bloat by not replacing retirees.
Right.
So if you would allow that attrition to start going, government would start to shrink. But in the final analysis, those are some of the things. And we love the military. But the problem is that there's a lot of bloat in that. And, I could talk to you for hours. Having been a TUS pilot, I was very deeply involved with the acquisition system. And there's a lot of places in the acquisition system that we can save money. A lot of them. So that's my answer to the bloat. Yes, ma'am.
I have a big concern. Our bridges. We had a bridge in Ohio that got struck. Then we have Baltimore and now Oklahoma. What's going on? And I hear that there was a lot of fuel on the Singapore one that hit Baltimore. Are we quietly under attack?
Yes.
Well, we're under attack, but not specifically that. That's a failure of taking care of our infrastructure. Mm-hmm. They keep talking about infrastructure. So where are my Navy folks here? We don't have any Navy. Do we have any Navy folks? Oh, we have a couple. So the Navy folks can tell you that ships require a lot of care and feeding. And they have to do it on a regular schedule because it takes a long time to refurbish things like that. Well, it's the same analogy to our bridges, and what's happening is that you can't not do the long-term maintenance on it. And that's a lot of what happened to these bridges. Yes, they got hit, but they were more vulnerable because they hadn't had the maintenance on them that they should. The second part of that is that there's some discussion that my wife alerted me to, especially in Baltimore. I can't talk about the other ones, but Baltimore, that there was some Green New Deal requirement for its fuel and engine, which made it not as, how should I say, flexible as regular ships are. And so I think there's going to be a lot that comes out of that accident report, but my wife indicated that there might have been, the engine might have quit at an inopportune time. And of course, when a body's in motion, if the engine quit, you can't control it, and things on the water don't move very fast. So if something like that happened when maybe they were coming to where they had expected to make a turn and all of a sudden couldn't, that could have contributed to it. So it could go back to global warming again, too. And that's just conjecture. That's something that we have to find out. But the reality is that we have people making decisions that are not suffering the consequences of their decisions, and they don't care about those of us who are. The open border with new diseases and everything coming into the country that we eradicated it, I guarantee that the children of the congressmen are not in those schools where the illegal alien kids are. It's the poorest in our society who have the least resources to combat that. I mean, we got rid of polio. We got rid of tuberculosis, and they're finding tuberculosis in New York City. Why? Because our government is not fulfilling its responsibility. So we need to do something about that. Next question. Yes, sir, in the back.
You mentioned the independent voters. What's your strategy to get all those independents down in Las Vegas to vote for you?
Well, the strategy is doing things like I'm doing now, showing up so that they see me. But, well, I'm glad you asked. This is straight man. So you can go on Amazon right now, and you can find this book by Tony Grady called American Values, Another Voice, a pilot's perspective on living the American dream. And so that was the whole title. So the main title is American Values, Another Voice. And that thesis of that book is that I'm successful in life because of the American values that my parents raised me with. Today we have leaders that don't support American values. We need better leaders. So I'm going to do things like get that book out in front of people. I'm going to do things like continue to talk to people like this. And then when all of you give me all of your gold, I'll have enough to get on TV, and then I'll be able to tell them. But the most important thing that I can do is to get out and talk to them. So my campaign is we're looking at them as coalitions. So there's like the minority businessmen. There's specifically the Chinese businessmen. There's a Filipino community. There's veterans groups, a bunch of different veterans groups that we have. Todd, what am I forgetting? There's some other groups that we might, but we're looking at coalitions that I go and talk to and they become aware of who I am. And so that's how I plan to reach the independents, with hopefully convincing them that I'm not crazy.
Let me just interrupt for a minute. How many people here know somebody who was a Republican and switched to an independent? Does anybody? Yeah. Bring them home, guys. Bring them home, okay? That's how we win. It's got to be too big to rig. Too big to rig.
Yes.
And so it has to bring in those independents. They're going to switch parties to get their vote.
Thank you, Todd. So yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm concerned about the downgrading of our military, the wokeness, how they just changed West Point.
Got rid of duty on our country.
Yes.
Or they're trying to.
So what's your thoughts on that? Isn't that downgrading our military?
Thank you for coming. So, at the Air Force Academy, when I was going through, all of our instructors were uniformed military personnel. Now they have 40% civilian instructors. And we have all of this wokeness. So we correct that by leadership. Again, if we get a strong executive, the academies have this thing called the Board of Visitors. And the Speaker of the House actually gets to appoint the Board of Visitors, and folks like that get nominated. That's one of my focuses because the Air Force Academy is woke. They're teaching DEI full speed. And so as a senator, I could have influence on starting to change that. And we have to start to change that. So that's one of the things. Got a recent briefing by Marine General retired, I think his name is Livingston, from North Carolina. In his briefing, he said, the troops are fine. They need to be well-trained, well-equipped, and well-led. The problem is the leadership. So with a strong executive, I would be telling President Trump to clean house in his 3- and 4-star generals because they're not doing their job. That's why we have the wokeness.
I don't think you have to tell him, I think.
So anyway,
I think he would do that.
it would come through the executive, and that's how we would start doing that. So good question. Yes, sir.
I have one question and 2 comments. One, who is the National Senatorial Committee supporting this faith? A lot of candidates, I mean, are they supporting you at all?
No. So here's the story behind the National Senatorial Committee. When they first heard about me, they said, "You have a great story." Then about a month later, they were real standoffish. And then I discovered that they had chosen who they decided was going to win. And so one of the things that my consultant, who's in Arlington, Virginia, said is that there's 2 things about the Senatorial Committee. They told me that I shouldn't run because I can't raise the money. And then the second thing is that they're scared because I almost beat Stavros and I didn't have any money in my last race. So the problem with the Senatorial Committee is they don't care about Nevada. They care about having somebody who's going to vote with Mitch McConnell,
Right.
who's going to vote with the establishment. Tony Grady's not going to vote with the establishment. I'm going to represent Nevadans. So I will tell you this for hope. The Senatorial Committee will not support every Republican candidate that's running. But they gave me a call and said, if you win the primary, we will support you.
Whoa, okay.
Hold on, sir, I got one more thing to say about this. About the Senatorial Committee in Washington, D.C. So, how many of you remember in 2006, a brand new senator who showed up in Washington from the state of Illinois?
Yep.
Okay, do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know who the senator was that picked him and endorsed him that eventually led to him walking into the White House?
McConnell.
Harry Reid. That's right.
He was the
Okay.
biggest traitor Nevada's ever known.
Harry Reid is the man who led Barack Obama into the White House. We cannot miss this opportunity to have something better. And here it is.
See, he keeps me straight. Go ahead, sir.
The 2 comments I had, it's good that you have your wife filling you all this information that she feeds you.
And she's going to.
Secondly, one of my nightly prayers is that the Lord would put God-fearing men and women, physicians of power in every government office. And if that's you, you have to talk about it. Your faith has to show.
I agree with that.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the things that you need to know about me is I don't wear faith like a badge. I am a person that tries to live in a way that I honor God.
Amen.
And I honor God, but it is the fact that Jesus Christ is my Savior that I'm here today. That's the only reason that I would even be here today. It's the reason that I married the woman that I married, because we happen to be on the same path and same place of maturity faith-wise when we met. And that's what's held us together. All of my children know who God is, and they know what He requires of us. So there were 3 things I wanted for my children. I wanted them to know who God was. I wanted them to be able to support themselves, and I wanted them to be able to contribute to society. That was what I wanted for my kids. And all of that, I think, comes from the fact that our country was built on freedom of religion and built on the fact that we were responsible to God. And a teaser for you to buy my book is that the largest chapter on it is on faith.
Okay.
Good question.
We hear so much today about
I'm a supporter of term limits. When you elect me to be your senator, I will serve for two terms and gladly step down.
Great.
Yes, ma'am.
I hear the Democrats are already trying to rename the Francis Scott Key Bridge. So I suggest, my suggestion is Rush Limbaugh Bridge.
We need to get wrestling going. So we need to get the news in here. Very good.
How old are you?
How old am I? 68.
68, okay.
You're a youngster.
Yeah, just a kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions? Well, I neither bored you or... Anyway, thank you for having me here today. It was my privilege. Please tell all your friends. And again, the book is American Values, Another Voice, a pilot's perspective on living the American dream. Thank you all, and aim high.
Okay, don't rush out, everybody, just 1 second. Don't forget, because I haven't heard from any of you about I need the questions, okay? So
Can we email you?
email me the questions, tell me who it's for, or if it's just for the general position. And thank you all for coming, and I will see you next month. Don't forget to donate to Tony and to the donation jar, which is for this group. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.